this is a load of crap.
We are just going to temporarily swap out the ECU.
I didn't want to have to do this. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel, and on today's video we're going to be looking at a intermittent starting issue on my personal car, and also the car's just gone into the body shop to have the bonnet done. That's now back, but we have some washer jets to fit, which might be a little bit more modern. Rather than them being jets, they're going to be the mist type ones. Now, I'm not sure if they'll work or not. Obviously, if they do, I'll leave a link to them in the description below. The R52, because that's still here. No one has come forward to buy that car yet. I've had a couple of messages showing some interest, but nothing concrete. So when this goes out, I think today is the last day that someone can make an offer on the car, and then tomorrow it will start to break. So in next week's video, I'll let you know the final decision with that, but that looks like that's going to go for spares at the moment. But yeah, let's get into it. And also, massive thank you to everyone that subscribed recently. We've almost got 1,000 subscribers, and since the channel's really only been going for probably about 8 weeks properly, it's a fantastic achievement. And if you haven't already and you consider subscribing, the button's down below. You can hit the subscribe button, hit the bell button, and then obviously when we upload videos, you'll get a notification about that. It's completely free, but it really does help because it shows what videos you're interested in, obviously that you want to see more content on here, and obviously if you've got something that you specifically want to see, just leave that in the comments below. I read through them all. I think I've replied to every comment on there in one shape or another. So yeah, huge thanks once again. Let's get into today's video. So let me talk you through what's happening, and then we'll go from there. So let's try and start the car. Normally, it should start within a couple of turns of the starter motor. So I'll probably do it now because I'm filming it, but let's try it and see. So hopefully that came across on camera. Just take them out so we don't have to listen to the buzzing. Right, hopefully that come across on camera. So it's not starting on the second or third turn, which is normal. It's probably taking 5 or 6. Now the weather today is really cold. It is about, well, I think last night's temperatures we were down to 1, probably less than 1 because it was icy this morning, but 1 degree Celsius. However, this will happen whether it's hot or cold. And for those that were sharp-eyed amongst you, probably might have seen on the ultra gauge up here, it was reading 36 degrees on the engine, so it's not particularly cold on the engine. So what have we done so far? Obviously, my initial thoughts were that it would be the fuel filter. Obviously that's been changed recently, and maybe it had air in the line, or maybe it's sucking back slightly. It's not very technical, but basically if the O-ring isn't 100% right, it can cause starting issues. But I assume starting issues would be completely gone, not just taking longer to turn over. However, it did start with that big split in the big ring before. So that was my first thought, which is why we got a fuel pressure gauge. Now, I've primed the pump for 10 cycles before, just to see if that will get rid of anything that's potentially in the fuel line, and that's by turning the key on, off, on, off, on, off, so the pump's pushing fuel through the whole time. Hasn't made a single bit of difference. Off camera, I changed the the cam position sensor. I've changed, which is that one down there by the engine mount. So let me just quickly show you that, which is down here. That has been changed for a known good working one. Not made any difference. I've changed the leads over. Haven't changed the coil pack, so might do that. However, the plugs is probably the next thing to do, and the fuel pressure gauge, because to do that you've got to take the intercooler off, and once the intercooler's out of the way you can then do both at the same time. So I'm going to try that next. So I'm going to get a tripod, set you up, take the intercooler off, get the fuel pressure gauge on the end there, turn the car so it primes, and then we're going to watch to see if the pressure drops, change the plugs to the BCR8s and potentially change the coil pack. Now I have checked for corrosion on 3, that's really common on these, not really a difference either, so that's where I'm at. If that fails, crank position sensor will be the next thing that I change, and again I've got a known good working one, so I know that I've got one that's working okay, but the problem with that is it is, well, this ideally I might be able to do it from underneath, but this front panel needs to come forward. It's down there. I need a O-ring as well for that. I'm not sure if I've got a spare, so I might fit it, just see if it makes a difference. If it does, then obviously I'll pick up an O-ring and finish it off properly. However, because these other bits are top of the engine, I'm going to start with them, then work down to the crank position sensor. So let me get a tripod, I'll set you up, we'll get the intercooler out of the way, and then we'll start working our way through the top section and see how we go on. So first things first, make sure the engine is cold, or it's had a chance to cool down if you've been using it. This is about 30 degrees at the moment. It's a really cold day today. So these are T30s. These are titanium clamps, titanium bolts from Mar Motorsport. So I'll leave a link to them in the description for those that may be interested. Right, now our fuel rail is here. This is our fuel regulator, and we need this end piece here to connect our hose to. So the problem that you've got, if you connect anything straight onto this, it's going to spray fuel at the end of it because obviously it's under pressure. To depressurize the system, you can disconnect the fuel pump and you can run it until the car cuts out. So I'll do that. Future me here, and I've paused this part of the video to let you know you should do this before removing the intercooler, unless you like your car to sound like one of the old Aero Vulcans on startup, as you will soon find out. You can pull a fuse out on the fuse box. What I'll do is I'll pop a bit of video over the top to show you which fuse it is. We'll pull it out, we'll depressurize it by running the car till it cuts out, and then we'll connect the pressure gauge onto the end of it. Right, we need to depressurize the fuel rail, and to do that we need to pull a fuse. Now I think it is this one on the top up here, F37, which is a 20 amp fuse. So we can tell quite easily by popping a key in ignition, and the fuel pump should not prime. So let me just try that quickly and you should be able to hear it. That noise is because the intercooler's off, but obviously you can run that with the intercooler on. It'll be fine. I just need to get rid of the fuel out of the system. Right, let's go back outside. So, F37, top right hand fuse. With that done, we need a connector. So what I'll do, I'll show you the kit quickly and show you which one we're using. So it's quite a big kit that we've got, and the only parts that we really need is fuel gauge and this connector which sits there. So again, I'll leave a link in the description if you want to try this yourself, but that is pretty much all you need. And what we are looking for is just to see whether we're holding fuel pressure, which will tell us if it is the pump. This may be easier with the removal of this bracket, so we will just see quickly what we are dealing with. Yeah, probably going to take that bracket off. I'm just getting an 8mm for that. I'll get that bracket out of the way. Engine bay needs a little bit of a clean up because it's just come back from paint. I mean, this might be perfectly fine, and it might just be perfectly normal once the car's been mapped, but people I've spoken to have said it is, other people have said it's not, so I just want to try and get to the bottom of it. If I do everything and it's still doing it, then, you know, it's what it is. Need a small one for that. You might just use that. We are running 550 Bosch injectors, which picked up from Modamini for actually not bad price, to be fair. I've used Modamini for a few bits recently. This dipstick, really good idea for if anyone needs a dipstick and they want to get rid of the OEM one. Again, I'll leave a link in the description, but these are Clearview ones, which means I'll show you in a minute what that means. Let me just get these out first. What you will find with these brackets, sometimes, if they've not been taken off for quite a long time, they will just snap. It's not the best idea to have two different metals going into each other. It seems to be a bit of a reoccurring theme on some of these cars. I mean, like for example, the spring clip on the rear calipers, absolute nightmare. If you don't change, I mean, not many people change their rear brakes anyway. If you don't change your rear brakes that often, when it comes to doing it, they'll just corrode in. So, yeah. Right. So let's screw this onto the end. It's worth having a towel or something nearby because there probably will still be a little bit of fuel come out. We'll have to see. Not convinced that's all the way on, but we will see. Right, that's definitely on there. Now, again, not sponsored by Pepsi Max, but that's the bottle we're using today. And it's only to catch any excess, so as long as it stays there and doesn't blow off, we are all good. Right. So what we need to do now is put the 20 amp fuse back in that we took out. So I'm going to go and put that back in. Then we're going to prime the fuel pump. And we're going to see what pressure it comes out to, if any, because I'm not sure that's on properly, but we'll see. Fuse is back in. Fuel pump's definitely working. The valve has not moved, so I've got to do all that again, take the fuel pump out, start the car, blah blah blah. So let me get this sorted out and then I'll cut back in when it's set up and working. Right, bit of an update. I had to change cameras because the other battery is dead, so I'm going to put that one on charge quickly. This fuel pressure kit from Amazon, which included all this stuff here, is junk. Because, let me quickly show you, there's a little circlip in there that you can just about see, the silver one, that one. Every time you go to connect it, it just pops off, and I don't know if there's an issue with the fuel rail down here or not. I'm going to get a little screwdriver in a minute to try it. But it's not actually putting any pressure through at all. So I'm going to pop a towel down, get a little screwdriver, just push it into the Schrader valve, just make sure it goes in and out, and obviously that fuel's going to come out of it. If it does, then we know this is a load of crap. But if it doesn't, then maybe this is right and we don't have any pressure and that's what's causing the issue. So going to quickly pop you on tripod, going to get a screwdriver and a towel, and then going to quickly pop on the end of there, see what comes out of it. I'm hoping it's going to be under some pressure, so I need a towel just to catch it. But obviously we're hoping something does come out of there. So yeah, let me try that quickly. I know it's very basic, it's not ideal, but I don't have much time, and this will be a quick test just to make sure we've actually got fuel well pressure, which I'm assuming we have because the car does run and drive absolutely fine. When it was mapped, they said the fueling was absolutely perfect, even with that little split in the bigger seal, which I don't actually think affects the fuel filter anyway. I think it's a smaller O-ring that possibly might be causing the issue, although this time I did lube it up round that ring and put that into place, and that hasn't actually made any difference. It wasn't starting ideally before, it's not starting ideally now either. So don't try this at home. What I'm going to do is pop a towel down here, and I'm going to get a very small Torx bit, what size this is, Zoom T10, and I'm going to just push on the end of the valve to make sure that there is actual pressure there, because that gauge is reading 0. That doesn't seem right, because when the car is running, it runs really well. So what I'm going to do, don't try this at home. I mean, you can try it at home, I'm not going to tell you not, but it's fuel, ignition, be careful, blah blah blah. This is literally going to be just a very tiny test. I don't know if I can actually get you in a bit closer, maybe. I know that's not an ideal camera view, but it shows you what we're trying to do. So I'll do this quickly, and then I'll bring you around this side and just show you what we're pushing against. So obviously, all I want to make sure is that we're getting fuel out the rail and that it's not taking a time. Because my thinking was originally, just quickly to explain, this happens regardless. The car could be running and then it could stop and it would still take a few turns to start. So I think the fuel pressure is fine, but we can test it. So we're going to push on the end of the valve and some fuel will come out and go into the towel basically. So just pop that around there. Yeah. And what we're going to do now is just quickly ignition on, ignition off. That primes the pump. And then when I do it, it should spray at the end rather than trickle like it was doing a minute ago. So yeah. So you probably saw that quite a bit came out. That means to me, I'm happy that the pump is putting pressure through. Also means this quite expensive kit, to be fair, from Amazon can go back. Right. So this is a Schrader valve here, and in the middle there is like a little plunger. Now if you push that in, that releases the pressure. Now if the fuel pump has been primed, this should spray out the end like it was doing in that towel. If the pressure drops over time, it won't necessarily spray at the end, it will just trickle out. So what I'm going to do is prime it. I'm going to move on and swap these plugs over here for the BCR 8s, which I will leave a link to in the description, and I'm going to come back after doing these plugs and do the same thing again and see if that still sprays out the end of it, because if it's not spraying out the end after it's been primed, indicates there might be some air in the system and it's basically pulling the fuel back towards the tank. Now that might not be technical, that could just be me talking crap. That is literally just my thinking. So I'm going to prime it, change the plugs and come back to that after we've done the plugs. This isn't firing money at the car, it's not like a parts cannon, because all these parts I've got spares anyway, so it's not actually costing me anything. It's just more going through bit by bit to see if we can work out what's causing the issue. So I will change the plugs, we'll change the coil pack. Next thing after that, is we'll test this fuel rail again, make sure it's still squirting at the end like it was a minute ago, and if that's all good, we'll move on to the crank position sensor. If it's still doing the same after all of that, what I can do is put in the old ECU, because this is a new ECU. Put the old one in, we can test it and see whether it's the map that's causing it, because if it's on the old ECU, although these injectors have been upgraded, the old ECU still got a map for this cam and 380 injectors, whereas these are 550s. We can just quickly test to see whether it's that, but I don't think it is, purely on the basis of on the previous ECU, obviously the fuel filter had that split in it, but it still wasn't starting, it wasn't turning over as quickly as it should. It is working, just not as quick as it should. So yeah, back on to more fault finding. Let's get these plugs and coil pack changed over. We'll discuss the torque settings for them, torque settings for that coil pack. We'll test the fuel rail again. If we do all that, it's still playing up, we'll go for the crank sensor, then we'll go for the ECU. So these plugs are NGK BCR80S. Now, relatively cheap plugs actually. I think I bought these 4 from GSF for less than £13. Again, I'll post a link in the description. We're going to change them one by one. When we get them out, we will check the condition of the plugs that come out, which I did do recently, but we'll do it again just to make sure. We'll go through torque settings and we'll put the new ones in. Now the ones that are in there are 7s, and I believe they may have been in the car for, put that down there for a minute, I think they've been in the car for quite a while actually. Now that sounds really bad, but the car has only done 3,000 miles I think in the last few years, so it's not a large number. Let me just quickly grab a magnet. Okay, right. Although this is a spark plug socket, it's a Blue Point 16mm. Doesn't actually pick up the spark plugs like it used to, so I have to use a magnet to get them out. Now, I did tidy these up recently, but yeah, not sure. They've been in the car for a while. Maybe it just needs some new plugs. Like I say, these are BKR7 EQUP. There is actually a thing going on at the moment with these plugs, by the way. I'm not sure if people are aware, but there's quite a few fake ones out there. So I think there has actually been a guidance thing come out from NGK to discuss how to tell the difference between real and fake ones. If I find out, I'll pop it in the description because it might be interesting to some of you, especially if you've been having running issues. This hasn't been a problem up until recently, so I know it's not the plugs that are at fault. I'll say it might be the plugs that are at fault, but I know they're not fake plugs, let's put it that way. With these, just do them tight, hand tight, so finger tight even. Don't go too mad with them. Their cylinder heads on these cars are really prone to stripping threads on spark plugs, so it's really important that you torque them down. And the torque setting for these plugs is, I think it's 27 Newton meters, but I'll pop it on the screen. So again, this is 2, just so you guys can comment if you want to. So Yeah, let me know what you think. That's 2. This is, believe it or not, apparently a spark plug ratchet. I'm not sure if it actually makes any difference, but if you look at it, it is a bit bent. I suppose if you're working down the side of like a big engine, maybe like a 6-cylinder BMW or something, that bend probably helps. That's from Halfords. You buy it as part of a kit. It's Halfords Advanced as well, so if it goes wrong, they will replace. I've had mine replaced once, and it's also handy for the oil filter housing because it gives you a bit more angle, and it's also really handy, saying that as well actually, what else is down there? It's the chain tensioner cap. It's ideal for that. So right, this is 3. So again, let me know in the comments if you see any potential issues. Doesn't look too bad, but might be due for a change. Right, this is 4. A little bit more carbon on 4. And here. Again. I mean, they don't look terrible to me, but I might be missing something. So, again, comments down below, guys, if you've seen something I might have missed. Let me know if you want more of like a background on this car. Like I said in last week's video, it is actually quite a good story. And what I might do is put something together as a bit of a Christmas video for those that have a bit more time to burn. Maybe go into a bit more detail about it and explain everything that's been done, because it's actually a lot of the stuff on this car was where I learned a lot of the stuff about minis, to be fair. I had a R53 before, hyper blue one. Don't know if that's still going actually, so I'll do a registration check. Again, that was a really nice car. I bought that from a guy down in Kent who owned a company that done like alignment but for sports cars, and I learnt some bits on that, but things like the Supercharged service and that, at the time I didn't really know much about the car at all, so I actually paid a local company to do it, and that was about £600. So yeah, since then a lot of it I've self-taught. I've always been interested in cars but never really had the space. I'm just going to quickly check, because obviously we put these back in. We'll check the fuel pressure on here, just make sure it's still spraying out the end. Yeah, so that's, I know that's really non-technical. I would have rather used the gauge, but obviously the gauge just doesn't want to play. So right, quite clean down there. There's no fuel sprayed everywhere. We call it all in the tout. So let me just quickly show you what we're looking like. Right, so we need to pop the cap back on here. So let's do that quickly. Right, got to put this bracket back on. We've got an uprated bypass valve down there, which is a Rooster one. I can't remember the guy's name. It's Nigel, I think. Again, if you need to change that, if you get like a yo-yo effect between 2,000 and 3,000 RPM, that's probably what's causing it. I can't remember if he does like not like a surcharge, but I think he'll pay you if you send the old one back. I don't know if he's changed his policy on that, but reach out to him. I think he's on the R53 Owners Club. I think he's actually got a website now as well. I'm sure it's Rooster Racing, but I'll leave a link in the description if I find it, and then pick one up if you need to. Spark plugs are in. I think we'll change that coil pack. I have looked on here already, and I'm pretty certain, because corrosion on here is quite a big thing as well. I am pretty, oh, mate, these are, I'm pretty certain these are all fine. It's normally 3, I think, that's the problem. I threw a bit of one, I can't, oh, there we go. So let's just tuck that down there for, so you can see it's actually alright on there. But we'll change the coil pack over anyway while we've got all this off, just to see. So let me go and grab one of them. I'll pop it back on the tripod. We'll quickly swap that over. And then I guess what we'll have to do then is pop this bracket back in, get the intercooler back on, and see whether that's made any difference. I'm not hopeful, to be honest. It might be the plugs, but we'll see. So let me stop there. I'll grab another coil pack. We'll get that swapped over. Probably need to prepare myself to take the, at least get the car up in here so I can get to that crank sensor, but let's test it before we go that far. So give me 1 sec. Right, we have another coil pack to just chuck on. I think this is perfectly fine, but because when it's running well. Now, what you have to be careful with when changing this is there are some little rubber donuts which sit underneath, and that helps with vibration, and they do need to go back in. So what we need to make sure is that we don't lose them when we lift it up. So you can see on there, look, you've got 4 just sitting on top of the coil pack. And you'll have underneath, and you have one on top. So that goes through the coil pack, and then there'll be another one that sits underneath it, and then they go in to the rocker cover. Now, these are a little bit of a pain to get in, because obviously you can't see underneath, but they also don't need a lot of, what's the word? They don't have a lot of torque. So basically, if you tighten them up too much, you could crack the plastic cam cover, or rocker cover, depending on how old you are, because that's what it used to be called. Now, that's how they should go on. So you have the ones on top there, ones on the bottom there, and you need one on each corner. That will stop vibration. Give us a little bit of a clean up while we're doing it. Yeah, nice. Obviously this isn't something that comes off all the time, so just make sure you don't drop any when you position it back into place. And just start to tighten them up until they start to bite, and then stop, because these only need 12 Newton meters of torque, which is hardly anything. And it's also the same for them bolts as well that go round the cam cover. If you tighten them up too much, you can crack the plastic, and you've got to replace the whole cover. So, and on these Cooper Works ones, the plaque needs to be swapped over if you change the cam cover, if you want to keep the history of the car. And they are also not the easiest things to get off either as well, so just avoid putting yourself in that position. Now, I have a 1/4 inch and a 1/2 inch torque wrench. I don't have a 3/8, but for this we don't need one. I've managed to actually get away with just those 2 sizes from the very beginning, to be fair, but I'll put a link in the description to the ones I use. They're from Teng. I've used them on head bolts before, obviously the wheels, and a lot of these little bits. This is my one. It's definitely been battered around a bit, but it still works fine. They do need to be calibrated officially. However, unless you're doing loads of jobs with head bolts and stuff like that, I mean, just apply a bit of common sense. There we go. So let's pop the Coilpack wiring back into place. The other thing that's worth bearing in mind with these as well, this wiring down the back, which I'll show you now quickly actually, before we put everything back in, it's probably easier to see. Coilpack wiring down here. If you've got an aftermarket tank, the Chinese ones for example, sometimes this wiring, because it sits down the back down there, that where my finger is. Let me see if I can zoom in a bit, make it a bit easier. Yeah, down here. That's it. That wiring there can sometimes sit too close to the tank. There's a good gap here, I can get my finger in there. But I've had it before where people have turned up, car's not running properly and the wiring's actually burnt through here because it's been resting against the metal tank. So if you are using a tank and the wiring is quite close, maybe heat shield or a bit of gold tape or something just to stop the wiring from pushing against and burning a hole through it, because if this melts your car will start running on 3 cylinders or stop running altogether. So a little tip there, Coilpack wiring, to get the plug out you have to push that red tab across and then that will release, and then you can just push it here and pull it back. So obviously just got to put our spark plug leads back in, HD leads. It's not really coming across how cold it is today, but we are talking probably 3-4 degrees at most, and that's now it's warmed up a bit. These are labelled up as well, so this is cylinder 4 and cylinder 3, so I'm going to put cylinder 3 in first, and then cylinder 4. Make sure it sounds nice, clicks on nicely, and then we've got 1, nice, and 2, which can go down there. There we go, that's it. So final check, push them down, make sure they're all on properly, no movement. There we go. Right, let's get that bracket back in. So that is our 3/8 mils. That is the other side of it. Sometimes these will snap off. So if they snap off, I mean one will hold it in, but it's, I can't remember what the word is it galvanic corrosion? We have extra wiring down here for the injectors, so we are a little bit tighter for space than standard because we've used adapters or pigtails for the Bosch injectors that we're using. So, but we are all good, we're in. Okay, happy with that. That's back in place. Happy with them, happy with that. We haven't taken anything else off the car. So to get an intercooler into place, these can be quite tricky. It's always worth checking them over as well, because if these start to split you'll be running into loads of running issues. So I've seen people using silicone ones. I saw someone recently having issues running because they used Jubilee clips around these. Where possible, it is always worth keeping the OEM snoot boots. There we go. Now, for this side, it's a very cold day, which means they'll be stiffer than usual. But what I tend to do, push it across, push it this way. That will allow you to slide that into place, and then I'll run my finger around the inside of it just to line it up. And with the brackets, what I do with them is put them in, slide them that way to begin with to give you a bit more room. Yep. And then once they're in both of them are underneath, then flip them and get them into place. Now, generally speaking, what you want to be careful of is that the edge of the snoot boot is flat and it's not curled under. It's important to get them lined up nicely. If they're not, you will have issues. So take a bit of time, make sure you're happy with them, and then go for it. These are low setting, because what we're going to do is just tighten them up by hand afterwards. So whatever you do, don't impact them in together. It's fine to impact them together on a very low setting, but do not go in on like the highest setting that you've got, because especially as they're getting a bit older, those brackets, they can crack. I've seen them split before. I've seen the screw, like the bolt, snap off inside there. I've seen all sorts. So best thing to do is do them up with the impact, just gently, go around afterwards with a T30 bit, just nip them up tight by hand. And they don't need to be super tight, they just need to be tight enough to seal it. Yeah, so like this one here, look. Yeah. What we don't want to do is go in with the impact and then that break, because I'll probably be okay, I've probably got spares, but most people watching this don't probably have spares for those sort of things. So it's not worth taking the risk for giving yourself a little bit more time and doing it properly. I'm going to prime it a couple of times just because we released the pressure off the fuel rail. Right, let's go for it. Right. Still didn't start great, but that might be because of the fuel. Give it a minute. I'll leave it running for a minute, have some of my coffee, I'm going to turn it off, give it 5-10 minutes and try it again. I'm not convinced it's fixed. It feels smoother, but we'll see in a minute. So let me grab my coffee. I'll come back, I'll knock it off, give it a few minutes and try and start it again. Right, I've knocked it off. I'm going to give it a couple of minutes. While that's going on though, let me show you what I was talking about earlier with these dipsticks. So, again, this is not sponsored by Modamini, but I think they're the only people I've seen that actually sell these. So a lot of people sell metal dipsticks for minis because the OEM ones are rubbish. However, the ends of them are yellow, which still means they're really difficult to see. Now these, from Modamini, have a white end on them. So if I pop that in, take it back out, you can see it's easier to read. Now obviously this is just been turned off, so I mean the oil level's not low, it's in the middle, but you can see it's easier to read that than it is to read the yellow one. So again, I'll leave a link in the description. I think that cost 15 quid. I don't know if they're in the Black Friday sales, or they're going to be in the sales or whatever. I don't really have anything to do with Modamini, but if you have the OEM fiberglass dipstick or whatever they are, I would always pick up one of the metal ones, even if it is one of the yellow ones, because they're so difficult to read that it just makes it a lot easier for you. So anyways, let's see if this will start without any hassle. Not really any different to what it was before. So I guess that really leaves the crank sensor, which is held in with a 10mm bolt. That is a bit of a ball ache to get to. May be able to get to it from underneath, not sure. We'll have a look in a minute. I mean, it might just be the way that it is, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm just being a bit paranoid, maybe it's in my head. The main thing is it starts and drives, but yeah, not sure. Doesn't quite feel right, if people know what I mean by that. So yes, let us try the last thing other than the ECU, and we can go from there. I didn't want to have to do this. I thought I might be able to get to it from underneath, but it turns out that with a aircon pipes, they really get in the way. So I'm going to time lapse getting the front end off of this, so I can get to that crank position sensor, which I am hoping solves the problem. However, it probably won't, and this will be a complete waste of time, but let's see. So anyway, let me get the front bumper or front end off. We'll change the crank position sensor over quickly, give it a go, put it all back together. If it all goes back together, then the only last thing is the ECU. We can quickly check the previous one, see if that makes a difference, but I think at that point I'll just accept that that is the way that it is, because I've changed every sensor that relates to probably the starting of the car, coil pack, plugs, camshaft, crank sensor. I've changed the fuel evap valve as well. I might, I don't know, the fuel pressure one, that's a tricky one. I might replace the kit with a different one, and still look into that, because it could be that O-ring on the fuel filter. However, once it's running, it's got good power. It runs smoother with the new plugs in, so that's another advantage. But let's get on with this. So I'll time lapse this part. So to remove the crank position sensor, which I've circled on the screen, you'll need a 10mm socket to be able to undo the bolt that holds it in place and then pull it out. This is looking at it from underneath the vehicle. If there's no air conditioning pipes, it's probably easy enough to get to, but with air conditioning pipes in the way, I do believe you are going to need to at least undo the front panel to be able to access it from underneath, and you'll probably also need to be able to get to it from above as well to tighten it back up once you put the new one in. But I'll show you what the one that comes out of the car looks like now. Right, that was a real ball ache. Basically, with the front bumper off, you don't have to disconnect the radiator or anything like that. You can just sort of slide it forward a bit, but still not easy. This is the one I've taken out. Doesn't actually look too bad. It's got a bit of oil on it, which is fine. There's no corrosion in the end of it, so that's what I was initially thinking. Maybe it was corroded in there. But it's not, so I'll put the new one in anyway, because we've got this far. Before I put the Aero bumper back on, something that does come up quite a bit, which I thought I might just quickly show you, is the outside temperature sensor, the Ambient one. Now, it's going to be quite difficult to see, so let me try and position my foot underneath. So this is the ambient temperature sensor here, and this clip is for the Aero bumper. Now a lot of people don't realise it comes with a clip. They think it just sits in here, which you can do, it's not a problem. But the idea is you're supposed to have this clip in place here, which is a little bit bent, and that sits on there like so, and that will sit in there, and then it'll poke out like it does on the other one. So obviously I thought I'd show you that. I don't know if there's a part number on this clip at all. No, it doesn't look like it. But yeah, that's what they're supposed to sit like, and then that is supposed to sit on there. And also obviously we strengthened these like we've done previously on the Cooper Works R53, the factory one, the black one. Also the same on here because this is a weak point, so we strengthened that down there as well. So anyway, I'm going to clip that in, put the bumper back on, and then I'll come back to you. Everything's back together. Ignore the coolant tank, that's because it's under pressure, so as soon as I release that the water will go up. Does need a bit of a top up, but there is water in there. All the arch line is back in, front bumper's back on, ambient temperature sensor's back in. We've changed the crank position sensor today, camshaft sensor off camera, coil pack, wiring, leads, checked for fuel pressure, although not measured because obviously that thing didn't work. So that really, it leaves fuel pressure still, ECU. Now, the ECU is mapped, so it could be part of the map, but they didn't mention it. So, yeah, we'll see. So let me give it a first go. We'll prime it a couple of times and then start. It's better, 100%. Is it fixed? Maybe not. You can see it's starting to go back up again. There, look, just a little tiny bit. That's what I was saying before about that being under pressure. If I release the cap, it'll straight up. So we'll see how we get on tomorrow after it's been left all night, because obviously at the moment it is starting better, it's running smoother, 100%. So those new spark plugs, I think, have probably solved part of the issue. The only problem that we've got at the minute is I still don't think it's turning over and firing up as quick as it should, but it is doing better. So I think it might be the ECU, it might be part of the map. I know that sounds a bit vague. That fuel pressure kit, that's going back, that didn't work. Yeah, that was a bit rubbish really. So we've still got two issues potentially. Could be fuel pressure related, could still be something to do with the fuel filter, or it could be the ECU map. So we've now narrowed it down to two possible things. So yeah, we'll come back tomorrow.
Right. We are just going to temporarily swap out the ECU for the original one, just to make sure that it's either part of the map it could still be fuel pressure gauge related. However, that rubbish one we were using yesterday from Amazon needs to go back. So I'm going to quickly swap the ECU out for the old one, just to make sure that is either part of the map or it's something we need to code out. And again, it is very, very cold this morning. Colder than yesterday. I can't see my breath, but believe you me, there is steam coming off of my breath. Right. This is a new camera angle, so we will see how that looks. This is a common issue with these cars, this bit here. Obviously it's freezing cold as well, which isn't helping, but they do tend to fall off a bit. This is a Bytronic ECU. It's in here at the moment. To show what's written on it. I'm just going to temporarily pop this back in just to see. Now, so this is mapped through 380 injectors, not 550s, but it does have a map for the cam on it, so it will run. And it will run for a short period, which is all I need it to run for, just to see how the startup sequence goes. So be quite careful, don't want to damage it. These pins are precarious. That's it. And it is very cold, and plastic becomes quite brittle in the cold. There we go. Yeah. That started a lot better. Yeah. Okay. So That's good, because it means we know it's something on the ECU. What we're going to do is, while we've got the car like this, I'm going to quickly do a read off of that ECU to get all of the options part of it read, and then I'm going to go through the options list on NCS Expert and untick and tick the options onto the new ECU, because the new ECUs come out of another car, and that car has cruise control on it. This car doesn't have cruise control, so I want to make sure the options are the same across both, just to see whether it will help. Right, just waiting for this to start. Unfortunately, because these cars are getting on a bit, you do need old laptops to run them. So let's see how this goes. You need a K plus DCAN cable, which is the blue one that you see down here. I think I've shown that before.
Right, let's get into this. So, what we are looking at today is the original data reads off of the original ECU, and then the data read off of the updated ECU. So the original one that's on the car, we're taking a read off of that yesterday. The updated one we are looking at to see if the options are the same. So what we need to do is open up NCS Dummy. Chassis is R50, that's the R50, 52, 53. We've gone over this before in a previous video. The module, because we are looking at the EMS module, which is the ECU, we are going to pull up the original data read that we took yesterday off of the car. So to do this, we need to go down to our folder that we stored them in. So I've got the original and the updated. I'm going to go for the original one first and then load the options in. Now this will give you the options that are set on the ECU, which will include things like cruise control, cooling fans, engine type, transmission, traction control, whether it's on the car or not, the alternator, and a few other little bits and bobs. Now when I was doing a read with the code reader, the code reader was flagging up that there was a cruise control issue. Now I don't have cruise control on my car, but obviously the ECU that came out of the donor car must have had cruise control on it. So as you can see, this is my original ECU, so it's set for the EU market. Cruise control is not enabled on here, not enabled. So the box is ticked but not enabled on there. Aircon is enabled, cooling fans, etc, etc. So what I've done, I've taken a couple of pictures of these options. Now what we're going to do is have a look at the updated ECU, which is on here. So we can see cruise control is enabled on here. Aircon is not enabled on here, which I have aircon on my car, so we need to update that. And the alternator is correct, everything else is correct. So cruise control, AC cutout, aircon not enabled. So that's now enabled, and cruise control is not enabled. So it should be the same. So let's just have a look. LED free, cruise control, AC cutout at full. Right, okay. AC cutout at full is on there. Cooling fans, transmission. Okay. Let me just export that. Right, I quickly thought I'd show you. We've loaded back in the EMS file now that we've coded in the cruise control off and the aircon on. So what I'm going to do quickly, I'm going to try and start the car now. It's only just ended. And then I'm going to grab the code reader, the Autel, stick that in, make sure that all the fault codes are cleared, and then we're going to try and start the car, because obviously I had the cruise control fault on there before. So let me quickly grab that, show you that, see what faults we come back with. Obviously this is now loaded in, and then we will go for a start. There's a few faults that have come up. I think they might be voltage related, or because we've got LED bulbs, they might be saying that open circuit when they're not. But I'll show you in a minute. That fault is come on. What's that one there? Yeah, cruise control. So that was the one that was on there before. Obviously we've not cleared the code since. Let's just see if it comes back. It might do. It might be deeper than just that. There we go. So no fault codes detected. Alright. All fault codes are now clear. Still got the dongle up in there. Let's do that. Control unit. Drive. DME. Live data. So overall, we've gone through all the sensors on the car. We know what's causing the slow start now, which is the ECU, and I don't have a problem with that, to be honest, but it's nice to know that that's definitely the issue. Plugged in the new, also the old ECU is starting as it should. The new one may be adjusted for cold starts, and it might just take a little bit longer to start, which isn't a problem because now we know what's doing it. So it's a long video. If you've got this far, thank you for watching. Obviously, hasn't made a huge amount of difference at the end, but we have managed to clear off a few of the codes. We managed to get new spark plugs in. We've tested all the sensors. So from my perspective, I'm quite happy with the way that it's gone. Obviously, let me know in the comments if you think I've missed anything. Let me know if you think there's something else we need to be doing. It may be next year, when the weather warms up a bit, we'll go back up to where the car was mapped. Maybe see if they can adjust it slightly to get a better start now that the fuel filter has been sorted out and we know what's causing the slow starting problem. But the power delivery, the power that it's getting, I think it's 237 at the crank, 237 brake at the crank. That's good power for 15% pulley on a pretty lightly modified engine. So I'm not really complaining. I just wanted to know what was causing the issue, and I think we've got to the bottom of it now. So in terms of the washer jets, I will go through that in the next video. We'll do a bit of a vlog update on the Aero kit, the Cooper Works brakes, and I'll show you those washer jets, how to fit them, and I can tell you they do work, but obviously I'll show you the results of that as well so you can see that for yourself, and I'll leave a link to them in the description in the next video. So thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the long video. Hopefully I've not missed anything, but if you think I have, leave it in the comments below and I'll pick it up and then maybe we'll go through it again in the future.